In 1998, the football world watched in stunned silence as Real Betis shattered every transfer record in existence, €30 million, for a 20-year-old Brazilian winger who had barely made his mark in European football. Denilson became the most expensive player on the planet overnight, worth more than Ronaldo, more than Zidane, more than any footballer who had ever lived. He was supposed to be the next big thing, the heir to Brazil's golden legacy, a player so gifted that clubs were willing to gamble their entire future on his left foot. For one brief, shining moment, Denilson stood at the very summit of world football, the crown jewel in a transfer market that had lost its mind. But then he vanished. Not literally, of course, but the player who commanded a king's ransom simply disappeared. From the spotlight, from the headlines, from the conversation entirely. Today, mention Denilson to most football fans and you'll get blank stares. The most expensive player in football history became a footnote, a cautionary tale, a mystery wrapped in one of the sport's most expensive riddles. So, what happened? How does the world's most valuable footballer become invisible? This is the story of Denilson and the transfer that broke football before it broke him. To understand the madness of 1998, you have to picture Brazil in the mid-90s. This was the era of Joga Bonito, the beautiful game, and from the sprawling city of Diadema, a new artist was on the rise. Denilson de Oliveira Araujo was just different. Playing for his local club São Paulo, he was more than just a footballer, he was an entertainer. Calling him a left winger doesn't do him justice. He was a force of nature. Powerfully built with a low centre of gravity, he had a left foot that could do almost anything he wanted it to. His signature move was the pedalada, the step over, but he didn't just do one or two. He'd perform a dizzying flurry of them, a hypnotic dance that would freeze defenders in place before he exploded past them down the line. It was pure, unfiltered showmanship, and Brazil absolutely fell in love with it. He made his debut for São Paulo at just 17 and quickly became the most talked about talent in a country that was already overflowing with it. His rise was like a rocket. He made his debut for the senior Brazilian national team before he even turned 20. Then came the 1997 Tournoi de France, a warm-up for the World Cup the following year. On a global stage, playing alongside giants like Ronaldo, Romario and Roberto Carlos, Denilson didn't just belong, he stole the show. European clubs, who were already watching him, went into a frenzy. This was the next great Brazilian, the heir to Garrincha, a player who embodied the soul of his nation's football. A bidding war was coming. Lazio, Manchester United and Barcelona were all circling. For a minute, a deal with Barcelona seemed like it was done. Denilson himself later said, "I went to sleep thinking that I had signed for Barcelona and woke up and found that I had signed for Betis." Now, Real Betis weren't Barcelona, they weren't Real Madrid. Based in Seville, they're a club with a fiery, passionate fan base, but a trophy cabinet that looked tiny next to Spain's giants. Their president at the time, Manuel Ruiz de Lopera, was an ambitious and eccentric character desperate to drag his club to the top. When he saw the Barcelona deal stall over a tax issue, Lopera made his move. And it wasn't just a move, it was an earthquake that shook the foundations of world football. Betis agreed to pay São Paulo £21.5 million, a fee that blew past the £19.5 million Inter Milan had paid for Ronaldo, the reigning World Player of the Year. Keep in mind, Ronaldo was a goal machine who had just scored 47 goals in 49 games for Barcelona. Denilson, on the other hand, was a flashy winger with just a handful of goals to his name. His value was based almost entirely on potential. To make things even crazier, Betis gave him a 10-year contract, a deal so long it was almost unheard of, basically tying their entire future to this one young man. The world was stunned. Why would a club like Betis risk everything on a player like this? The answer was pure ambition. Lopera was gambling that Denilson would be their saviour, the star who would not only win them games but raise their global profile, bringing in TV money and new investment. For the fans in Seville, it was a dream come true. They had pulled off the impossible. They had outbid the giants and signed the most exciting young player on the planet. When Denilson arrived in Spain after reaching the 1998 World Cup final with Brazil, he wasn't just a new signing, he was a symbol of a glorious new era. He was expected to be a saviour. That's a burden no 20-year-old should ever have to carry. The reality of La Liga hit Denilson like a bucket of cold water. The Spanish league in the late 90s was tough, tactical and brutally physical. The time and space he enjoyed in Brazil, it just wasn't there. Defenders didn't stand back and admire his tricks. They were organised, cynical, and would kick him off the park. His game, which was so reliant on individual magic, started to look less like genius and more like self-indulgence. The main criticism emerged quickly and would follow him for his whole career. For all the flash, there was a shocking lack of end product. He could pull off a breathtaking move to beat 3 defenders, sending a wave of excitement through the stadium, only for it all to end with a weak pass or a shot blasted into the crowd. As one analyst put it, he was all style, no substance. He was a circus act in a team of workers. The Betis side was solid, but just didn't have the quality to support a maverick like him. They needed someone to win them games, and while Denilson could entertain, he wasn't doing that. In his first season, he scored just 2 goals in 35 games. The pressure of that world record price tag was suffocating. Every mistake, every failed dribble was magnified and judged against the £21.5 million figure. He was a luxury player in a team that couldn't afford one. Then, the unthinkable happened. At the end of his second season, Real Betis were relegated. The world's most expensive player was going down to the second division. It was an absolute catastrophe for both the player and the club. The project had failed spectacularly. Denilson was loaned back to Brazil to play for Flamengo in a desperate hope that he could find his confidence again. He returned to Betis in January 2001 and, to his credit, helped the club get promoted back to La Liga. But the magic was already fading. He wasn't the guaranteed starter anymore, no longer the messiah. He was becoming an impact sub, a guy you bring on to do a few tricks when the game is already decided. He had become a very, very expensive bench warmer. Just as his club career was stuck in the mud, an unexpected shot at redemption came on the world's biggest stage. Denilson was named in Brazil's squad for the 2002 FIFA World Cup in South Korea and Japan. He wasn't a star of the team, which was built around the terrifying trio of Ronaldo, Rivaldo and Ronaldinho. Instead, his coach, Scolari, used him exactly as Betis had started to, as a specialist substitute. His job was simple: come on late in the game, run at tired defenders, draw fouls, and most importantly, kill the clock. And in the semi-final, against a tough Turkey side with Brazil hanging on to a tense 1-0 lead, Denilson produced the most iconic moment of his career. Brought on in the final minutes, he got the ball near the corner flag. Instantly, he was swarmed, not by 1, not by 2, but by 4 Turkish players, all desperately trying to tackle him. What happened next was pure Denilson. He shimmied, he feinted, he shielded the ball, leading them on a bizarre slow-motion chase down the byline. He didn't score, he didn't create a chance. But he kept the ball. He drew a foul. He wasted the precious seconds that took Brazil to the World Cup final. A few days later, he came on for the final minute in the final against Germany as Brazil were crowned world champions. He had a World Cup winner's medal, the ultimate prize in football. And yet, it was bittersweet. He was a world champion, but his main contribution was a cameo as a clever time waster. The boy who was supposed to be the next global superstar had become a specialist in running down the clock. It was the perfect metaphor for his career, a flash of brilliance that served a practical, not a spectacular purpose. Winning the World Cup didn't change much for him back in Spain. He stayed at Betis for 3 more seasons, a ghost of the player they thought they'd signed. His relationship with the club was trapped by that massive contract. He was too expensive for anyone to buy, but not good enough to be a key player. In 2005, he did help Betis win the Copa del Rey, a huge trophy for the club, but his role was, again, mostly from the bench. Finally, 7 years into his 10-year deal, he and the club parted ways. He left for the French club Bordeaux, having scored just 14 league goals in 191 games. What followed wasn't a career comeback, but a slow, wandering drift into footballing obscurity. This was the real disappearance. After one decent season in France, he began a strange journey that saw him play in a wild array of countries. He had a short spell at Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia. He signed for FC Dallas in the MLS but lasted only 8 games. He went back to Brazil with Palmeiras, then had a failed trial with Bolton Wanderers in England. So what really went wrong? In the end, it was a perfect storm. Psychologically, he might have believed his own hype a little too much, only for the harsh reality of European football to shatter his confidence. Tactically, he was a bit of a one-trick pony in an era where the game was getting much more sophisticated. He was completely reliant on his left foot, a weakness that smart coaches quickly figured out and exploited. He was a street footballer, an improviser, who was asked to perform in the rigid, structured world of La Liga. It was like asking a great jazz musician to play a classical score. The magic just got lost in translation. And then, of course, there was the money. That £21.5 million fee was an anchor that dragged him down his entire time in Spain. He was never just a player, he was a walking balance sheet, and he was always in red. Today, Denilson has found a comfortable life after football. He's a popular sports commentator in Brazil, where his charismatic personality still shines. He didn't literally disappear, but he vanished from the elite stage he was supposed to own. So, how should we remember him? Not as a flop. You can't call a World Cup winner a flop. For Betis fans, he's remembered with a strange mix of affection and regret, a symbol of a time when their club dared to dream an impossible dream. Perhaps the tragedy of Denilson isn't that he failed to become the best in the world. The tragedy is that he arrived at the exact moment the game was changing. He was a pure entertainer in a sport that was starting to value efficiency over art and stats over spectacle. He was a showman whose greatest trick was making us believe for one brief, shining moment that flair alone could conquer the world. The sad truth is, it couldn't. And as he faded away, maybe a little bit of the game's magic disappeared with him.